So many moons ago, my son, I believe, alerted me to this Armstrong bracket that was on Craigslist. So I went and checked it out and bought it, and I was happy with it. It was old, but it had never had a motor mounted on it. It came off a project boat, and I contacted Armstrong. There's a serial number on it, and I was told that it was rated, in fact, for 250 horsepower. And I didn't have a motor at the time, but that's kind of what I was thinking about. So, sounded good, moving forward. But I wasn't crazy how it was open on the bottom. That was access to the bolt. So I brought it to the shop and I closed in that area, added a flange across the bottom, and I put some plate across that opening, and I cut a hole in the top for access to the bolts. And everything was lovely. I was stoked. And then I put it on the back of the boat, and there was a little voice in the back of my head saying, man, this thing sure is little for put a big old motor on. But, move forward, onward through the fog. And now, 6-7 months later, I'm having a change of heart.
Okay, we're going to make a change in my boat, and it's a big change. And it's been coming for a long time. Since the first time I put the motor on this bracket, it just didn't look right to me. Structurally, it just sticks out too far, and the footprint of the bolt pattern is too small, and I've been like toying with it, just hasn't set well with me. And then when I put it in the water and the back floated too low, that kind of added to it. You know, the further it sticks out in the back, the deeper the back of the boat's going to float. And then what kind of set it off is I got a little crack in the gel coat right here. You know, I didn't use gel coat, I used epoxy, but that just means something's moving, shaking, just probably going overboard here, but I don't care. It's my boat, and it's summertime, and we don't usually use the boat in the summer because it's too freaking hot. So now's the time to do it. I'm going to take the motor off. I'm going to take the bracket off. I'm going to shorten it 5 inches, because right now the motor is more or less out of the water, or the tilt position would keep the motor out of the water. I got a straight edge here. I got 5 inches. I can move it forward without impeding getting the motor out the water. That will reduce the torque on this motor pod, motor mount. And then I'm going to do away with my wooden deals, and I'm going to weld aluminum. Just make this structure all the way solid from one side of the boat to the other. And then I'm probably going to weld a little aluminum pod on the bottom just for flotation. So originally getting the control cables and whatnot through the little hose into the engine was pretty challenging, but now that they're all in there, getting it off is piece of cheese. All I had to do was unbolt this plastic thing that sits right here and unscrew the NEMA 2000 connector, unsnap the engine control. We got a fuel line, we've got hot and negative battery cables, and the 2 hydraulic steering lines, and it's free. I just need to get it under the hoist and get these big bolts out. So I've got 3 goals here. One is to reduce weight in the back by reducing the size of this close to 6 inches, which is 25%, and removing the wood steps, even though I like them, they're heavy. So one is weight reduction. 2, moving the motor forward is going to make the boat less sinky in the back. It's going to distribute the weight a little better. It's like 300 foot-pounds of torque just moving it 6 inches forward. And that's at static, so when you're bouncing down the highway, it's a big deal structurally wise. And 3 is just to soothe my gremlins. I'm just, I know this is crazy, but I'm worried about my transom with that big load sticking out so far. And the first time I saw it, I said, man, I don't know about this. But anyway, I'm going to push it up forward, and I'm going to extend this aluminum weldment all the way to here. So it'll be distributed, the load will be distributed over a greater area of the transom than it is now. So gotta start taking these swim steps off.
So this crack is what pushed me over the edge to make this decision. It's a shrinkage crack, and it's in my epoxy filler, and I've had some problems in this little area. I must have mixed a batch of epoxy incorrectly, because I haven't had any trouble on my previous 2 boats and on this boat, except for this one area back here. But it just is an indicator that there's some vibration going on back here, and it makes me nervous. So that's why we're doing this.
So you probably can't see that, but I have 3 3/4 wrenches, one on 3 different nuts, and they're kind of just stuck on there. So I'm gonna, hopefully I can go on the inside and unscrew the bolts, and the wrenches won't fall off. That way I don't have to keep going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Haven't done much foundry work in the last few weeks, but just about as soon as I hung the motor from the hoist, which is the foundry hoist, local artist brings me 4 pieces to cast. How you like that? Hopefully during a week and a half while I'm making the investment molds, I'll have this motor back on the boat, hopefully. So when my son-in-law and I put these bolts in, it was pretty easy because we didn't have the fish tank in the way. But now the bait tank is in the way and it's not so easy. So I went and borrowed, well, I wanted to buy a battery powered impact, and the only ones they had are as a kit for 400 bucks, and I couldn't justify that. So I went and borrowed some pneumatic ones from my friend, and hopefully they'll help us get these bolts out. I don't like to use pneumatic tools on stainless steel. Stainless has a propensity to gall up or lock up, but it's too bad. We're going to give it a shot. Okay, all the bolts are out except for the 5 across the top, and on those the nuts are off and they're loose and I can't drive them. This has been a royal pain in the rear, and I knew it was going to be because they're big bolts and they're hard to get to, and they're completely covered with sealant, so they don't turn by hand. Nothing wants to move. You can't get the sockets on the heads. It's just been a pain, but I'm getting it. I'm getting ready to try to pull the bracket off. I've used this little piece of wood to mark the same distance out all the way around. So I'll have some lines to cut it by when I get it off. And the only thing really holding it on now is a lot of caulk. So I'm going to try to use my multi-tool to see if I can't cut through the caulk.
So the angles that were holding up my swim step are set in epoxy, and the multi-tool did some good with the epoxy because it was hard and it actually saw it. But the outboard bracket is set in polyurethane caulk, and the multi-tool did really no good whatsoever. I was surprised at how hard it was just to get these little angles off, and I haven't got the engine bracket to move yet. Well, my swim platform has whooped me for the day. I give up. I got all the bolts out, and I'm trying to cut the caulk, and it's very hard, and there's a lot of it. So I think I need to go home and cut about 50 hardwood wedges and try to wedge it all the way around. I can't do that here at the foundry. I did go ahead and pull off those 2 fiberglass angles that were holding up the wooden swim step, and they caused some minor damage getting them off, but not terrible. And I did grind out where the crack was, and I was correct. It's in the filler. The filler was real thick right here. And if you've looked at all my videos, I had some problems with some gray filler that didn't cure right, and I tried to get it all out and do it again. But this is that, I think maybe that gray filler just never got as hard as it should. But anyway, that doesn't change the plan. I still want to make the outboard bracket shorter, and I want to make it in one piece all the way to the side. So tomorrow I will continue to try to get it off without, I can get a crowbar and rip it off, but I don't want to rip up all my laminates. I want to try to get it free without too much damage. And I've been here long enough, so I'm going to pick up, clean up, and head home. Yesterday I got the engine off, which wasn't really hard. I got all the bolts out, which was a little harder.
And then I tried to get the engine pot off, and it is stuck with the caulk. I got kind of frustrated, so I left it alone. I went ahead and got the two angles that were holding the swim steps off. And yesterday afternoon, I went home and cut a whole bunch of wooden wedges. So I'm hoping if I can get it started, I can get it off. I really don't want to destroy my transom trying to get it off, but I want to get it off.
So by the way, I did sign up for YouTube to put commercials on my videos. Sorry about that, but they were putting them on there anyway. So I figured I might as well get a few cents out of each one. And after the first month, it looks like I'm going to get like 110 bucks a month, which is not a life changer, but it's nice to have. And I think the first purchase I'm going to make is a different camera. I've always used a Canon 110. It's just a little box camera, and it does great videos, but the battery life is extremely short, so I have to really be careful about how often I have the camera running. So I think I'm going to go with the GoPros. I think they have a longer battery life. And I thank everybody for signing up, and if you hit the like button and if you subscribe, it helps out. And who knows, I might get up to 120 bucks a month, maybe 125. It's awesome.
Boom.
Well, that was easy. Just took maybe, I don't know, 4 hours.
Sweet. So this is the sealant I use to put the engine bracket on there. It's PL Marine. It's a Loctite product, and I use it because it's available at Home Depot. When I pulled the engine bracket off, some of the sealant let go from the aluminum. Some of the sealant pulled the epoxy fairing compound off of the glass. Some of the sealant pulled the original paint off of the engine bracket. So I know it's not 3M. Everybody thinks 3M is wonderful, but I don't know how it could have held any better. I had a hell of a time getting it off, even after all the bolts were off. I learned a new trick. Put the sanding pad that's made from my 7-inch grinder on my 4.5-inch grinder, and I put these 7-inch 36 grit discs on there, and boy does that burn through fiberglass fast. I wish I'd have known this earlier on in the build. It would have saved me a lot of hours. And they're made in Turkey, not China, so that's nice. And I'm probably over RPM, probably spinning them faster than they're meant for. But it says maximum 60 meters per second. And I was pretty much just standing there, so I figured they were all right. They held up. Took me 2 discs to grind out the back. So I went ahead and ground out all the surface that was suspect marginal from ripping off these parts. And over here where the big crack showed up, I think it would have showed up no matter what. I think I had some bad epoxy, whether I didn't mix it thoroughly or didn't mix it well, or if it got wet. But the more I was grinding and the little layers were just peeling off, the sun's not messing this up. So I just kept going as long as it was coming loose. I got this big old area, and I see another little spot here where when it gets hot from the sander, it was just kind of lifting off. The good epoxy doesn't do that, so I think, I don't know, must have had some bad stuff. So we're going to patch all that up. And that's not the deal breaker with changing the engine bracket. I still think the engine's sticking out too far, and I still want an aluminum swim step to save some weight. But this was probably going to happen no matter what, because it's just some bad material.
So I set the foot of the saw to the right angle between the top and the flange and took a deep breath, and here we go. No turning back now. Using a blade to cut aluminum is so much more efficient than using abrasives. Abrasives just that work so good on steel, they just make a lot of heat in aluminum and just they take forever, and I've tried to avoid using those when I can.
No turning back now. I got it cut. I stood this piece up on the table to find my high spots, and I got them ground down, so this plane is pretty darn flat. I don't know if you saw my first video, but I closed in this hole down here and added this checker plate in this flange. So this little bit of checker plate's going to stay. I'm going to have to cut this off so I can get a weld to the original flange in the bottom corner. And then I can get a good weld there too while I got it apart. So, I'm going to try to keep the original flange because all the holes work except for the 3 on that far edge. I'm going to lose those. And I'm going to go home where I have a table saw and cut this flange off. And I also have some aluminum at home. I'm going to make the extensions, get it all to fit. Tack weld the aluminum extensions to the frame, put it on the boat, and drill all the holes. I'm going to have some new holes. I have 3 new holes here, and I'll have new holes on the extensions. Get them all drilled so everything will be lovely, and then look at welding this part back to the flange. It's going to have to be pretty strong. So I'm going to start getting the flange ready by cutting off these 2 little flanges that I added a long time ago. All right, a little sanding, it'll be all. Now I'm going to cut the sides off on the table saw, but I'm going to leave the flange. So I'm going to cut it right down here, 1/4 inch. And then I'll probably have to cut this with the skill saw.
So the blade that I have in my table saw is meant for cutting non-ferrous metals. It has like a negative rake, so it's much quieter and smoother than the blade I use on both my skill saw and the miter saw. The blade on my miter saw over at the foundry is really toast. I really need to get another blade for it. It'll just barely cut anymore. I don't want to put a good blade on it because I'm going to ruin it, but I need something better than what I have.
Okay, good progress. I got the flange where it can go back on the engine pod. I can get a butt weld around the perimeter, which is pretty much what it had originally. I can get a weld here, and I can get an additional weld here and here because I kept the top flange from the boat flange. So I kept the top part, and I could put some hole saw holes, and we can get some more weld. So I think a good welder, not me, can get this back to the original strength. Now I want some more strength, so we're gonna start cutting some more aluminum up. And the original strength was strong enough to hold the motor. I just wasn't comfortable with it. I want to spread the load out, so I'm going to pull these wings out with some heavy aluminum and put some kind of braces to brace them, so that when these wings are bolted, they'll hold up some of the motor, or the thrust of the motor. It's not so much the weight, although that's a lot. The thrust is like incredible with this 250 horsepower. So I got this 1-inch piece of aluminum. I'm gonna cut it to length, and then I'm gonna cut two 3-inch strips, and then I'm gonna try to rip it because I don't want a full 1 inch. I just maybe want maybe a 1/2 inch. Ripping it on a table saw, I'm pretty confident of. Cutting this off on the miter saw, we'll see. I don't know how powerful that saw is.
So I failed to turn the camera on, but this was kind of a non-event. The 12-inch Bosch radial launch saw went right through the aluminum. Easy schmeezy.
So this is that aluminum plate I just cut, and this is the integral part of the swim platform that will be welded all up into the engine pod. What I have to do now is notch it where it goes through, and I've notched, I didn't show it, but I notched the bottom of this plate from here that way, so it'll be flush with the transom. And yeah, so I just got to notch this white part, and I'm getting to where I don't have a whole lot more I can do at home. I need to go weld, but it's kind of late in the day. Anyway, I'm gonna keep cutting and sanding. Alright, so I got my notches for the wings that are gonna stick out, and after this is welded, I'm gonna put some braces, and then there'll be the curve, which will be the outside of the swim step, and this will be drilled and through bolted to the transom. Pretty happy so far. So I got to grind a lot of paint and get ready for some welds, and I think that I can weld this plate to the original flange, because it's going to be through bolted anyway. The welds won't do much, but I think when it comes to the pod bolting to the original flange, I think I'll bring it to an aluminum welder guy to make sure I get a good weld, because it's kind of important. So time to start grinding a lot of paint. So these wings are going to pick up 2 bolts from the original flange. So they'll be bolted and welded, and they overlap so that these bolts will help hold this to the boat, and we'll put some gussets. It's going to be strong as a bull, no bull.
So about here I'm through with what I need to use the table saw for, so we'll move back to the foundry, and this is probably a good time to wrap up this video. Thanks for watching.